is Bruce Schneier, and he is a security expert, and he wrote a piece at The Atlantic all about keeping calm and carrying on, which is kind of what the president was referring to today. And Bruce, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
How does, having lived in New York City during 9/11 and working in New York City during 9/11 and the aftermath, I think I know a little bit about it. I think we all know a little bit about it. But certainly when something happens like this, even if we've been through it before on a larger scale or smaller scale, that community is rocked and hit hard.
And we all are, because that community isn't just Boston, it's not just Massachusetts, it's the United States, it's the whole world. You know, we all are rocked by this, and depending on how close we are, physically, culturally, ethnically, we feel fear, and that's rational. But what I'm saying is that that fear is not really justified, it's an overreaction, and as an act of defiance, we should deliberately refuse to be terrorized, because by doing that, we deny the terrorists their victory.
All right. Well, I couldn't agree with the first part of what you said more. I agree 100%. And we have to continue to live our lives. Should we take precaution? Should we report something if we see something? If our senses tell us don't go there, just if you will, like if you're walking down the street at night and you don't want to go down that block and you said, then don't do it. But I agree. Terrorism, acts of terrorism in this country, thank God, are rare, and you're absolutely right. Having said that, and I've had this discussion with Judy Miller and others in the last few days, I don't see how not succumbing to fear or showing that we're all united and all that, I don't think that the terrorists, whether they're al-Qaeda and religiously motivated and think that by doing this they're going to go to heaven and the Quran tells them to, or if they're domestic terrorists from the United States who are trying to send some warped statement to the government, if they're willing to kill children, I don't think how we react means anything to them. What do you think? You really think they're going to say, or other prospective terrorists are going to say, well, they can't be shaken, they can't be deterred, so we're not going to do it. I just don't buy that.
I think it's 100% true. Right? Terrorism is fundamentally a crime against your psyche. Right? The bombs, the victims, the carnage, the horror are props to make you scared, to make you fearful, to make you less trusting of your government and of your fellow citizens. And by refusing to do that, it's not going to make terrorism go away, but it will make it far less effective. If you look at how effective 9/11 was, it's not because of the blast, it's because of how our nation reacted. I think denying them the victory is extremely important. And because terrorism is so rare, the overreaction is counterproductive. It makes no sense. Right?
Well,
our country, our freedoms are more valuable.
No, the overreaction, I get, and like I said, for our own sake. But I just feel that these people, if you're willing to blow up an 8-year-old boy, then it doesn't matter. Then they're going to keep doing it again and again and again, whether we don't react at all or whether we close down and say no more marathons. They're going to keep doing it.
So those who study this say that's not true. Of course, for some, you're right. But the belief from people who study terrorism and motivations is that's not necessary.
All right, well, let's take it first, Bruce.
And remember, again and again and again means almost never. Right? This almost never happens.
Well, yes, in this country, yes, to successfully it never happens.
Yeah,
there are.
I shared a news discussion with a Pakistani who said that in his country, a terrorist bomb that kills a few people might not make the front page.
Well, God help us if we ever get to that point. I know.
That is a measure of how safe we are.
Right.
The massive news coverage is proof of how safe we are.
Right. But I want to get back, Bruce, and because you're also a security expert, I want to get back to the point, the people who study it. And I don't know who you're referring to specifically or not. And I'll concede that there are people, wonderful people, smart people like Judy Miller and others who agree with you. But again, jihadists believe, usually by killing themselves and doing this kind of thing, they're going to heaven. They're taught this from the time they're kids. Kill the infidel, blah, blah, blah. They're not going to look and say, oh, well, it doesn't bother them. I guess we shouldn't do it. And and homegrown terrorists, quote unquote, they know they're going to get the front page. They know they're going to get CNN and all the networks and all the media for weeks talking about it. And I believe that's enough for them, whether or not we change our behavior.
Well, but talking about it for weeks is part of our behavior. We decide that this is the most important thing. That the number of people who died in car crashes that day around the country, which is probably more, wasn't important. We decide that the rare and spectacular. Now, it's natural, right? It's news. You will never report 320 million people got home safely today. Right? You're not going to do that.
Right, man bites dog or dog bites man, right?
Right. But, this I think is what we have to do. We have to recognize that our country is more important, that living in fear is counterproductive, is harmful, and we are better off. I mean, even if it doesn't affect what the terrorists
No,
do.
I agree with you on. I couldn't agree with you more. For our own sake, we have to live that way, and you're absolutely right. Now the people of Boston have shown, great perseverance, and I played the whole national anthem a little while ago from the Bruins game against the Sabres last night in Boston, the first sporting event since the marathon to take place up in Boston. And they had a guy come out who sings the national anthem there all the time. He started, but then he held the microphone out and he swung his arm like leading the whole arena, and the whole arena sang the whole song and then started chanting USA, USA, a little reminiscent of Yankee Stadium and the game where President Bush came and threw out the first pitch shortly after 9/11. And that's, and seeing people wiping the tears from their eyes, that's the spirit of America.
That's right, and the spirit of helping. We are a free society, and the price of freedom is the potentiality of crime, and we have to recognize that 100% safety is not possible. We have to accept that our leaders cannot make risk go away, and we can't expect them to. Right? My fear is that people will say something must be done.
Okay, but we're talking.
Marathons are magically not safe anymore.
No, we're talking
That's my worry.
Well, we're talking to Bruce Schneier. He is a security expert and author here on the Steve Malzberg Show, and he wrote a piece in the Atlantic. Well, we do have to. I mean, taking after 9/11. New York City, especially in the downtown area, but throughout the city, basically formed their own FBI as a department. They have cameras everywhere, and they have thwarted attack after attack after attack. And you say in your piece, don't glorify the terrorists by calling this part of a war on terror. Wars involve two legitimate sides. But they're not. They're depending on who they are, or even not depending on why they did it. They are enemy combatants to me. They are terrorists to me. They're not just bank robbers. And you know what? If they find these guys, they should all be thrown in Gitmo. Their heads should all be put underwater, and we should make them tell us if there's any more out there, if their group is planning any more, and where that would be. Not give them lawyers and read them their rights and give them the right, and in fact tell them to shut up.
And then our country is weakened because of that.
How is our country weakened when the next attack? Let me ask you a question, Bruce. Let me ask you a question. God forbid, ticking bomb scenario. The FBI, the CIA, they all know that a school is going to be blown up in this country. We have someone in custody that everyone believes. Let me finish.
No, don't do this. Don't do that.
Oh, don't do this. Why? You don't like reality?
No, it's because it's not reality.
What if it was reality? I could ask you a hypothetical question.
The reason you give terrorist attorneys and every right you give every other criminal in the United States, whether they're citizens or not, because that's what's making our country great.
No. Sacrificing our children and our citizens doesn't make our country great. No.
Too valuable.
Excuse me.
So
let me ask you a question. What laws? Since when do enemy combatants have rights in our country in the criminal justice system? Did the Nazis?
They did in World War II.
They did in World War II. We shot Nazis on sight when they came here in the submarines and put them up against the wall and shot them. We put Japanese in internment camps. When did these rights come about?
Less shouting.
When did these rights come about, sir?
Shouting. They came about from the beginning of our country. And
really? Really? Enemy combatants in war against us could go to court.
No. This is why justice is so important.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question again, and if you refuse to answer it, Bruce, I think it speaks volumes. If we know that a bomb is going off in a school in Washington, D.C., and we know it's going to, or another city, and we know the guy who knows where it's going to happen, and he won't tell us because he's sitting there saying, whatever, this one's great, that one's great, my cause is great, I will not talk. You rather have him have a lawyer and not have the right to talk, or put his head underwater and make him talk to prevent the bomb from going off?
No, because that only happens in the movie.
Really? Well, I'm telling you it's happening in reality.
Not happening now.
Sir, it has happened in the past.
No, it hasn't.
That is a lie. We have stopped attacks in this country.
No,
Leon Panetta even said it, sir.
Okay, we have to stop shouting.
You know what? I'm done with the interview. Thank you for your time. Bye.